For the past couple of art classes, you've been talking about one-point perspective and drawing boxes in one-point perspective. For our project, we're going to do your name in one-point perspective. So this is going to be a little bit more challenging. So it's very important that you understand the whole concept of one-point perspective in drawing your boxes. It will make this project a lot easier if you understand. Just like we did with our boxes in one-point perspective, you're going to draw very lightly. So I'm going to use a straight edge. I'm just using a piece of folded paper. If you have a ruler, that's great, but you don't have to have a ruler. Just something to draw a straight edge. In the middle of your paper, in landscape orientation, you're going to softly, very softly draw a line across your paper, like that. Remember, this is called your horizon line. And I will be moving a little bit faster right now because we've already covered this a couple of times. In the middle of that horizon line, you're going to put a little dot in there very lightly, and that's going to be your vanishing point, just like we started off before. Now, what we're going to be doing is your name. You can choose a word if you like, or you can do your name. You can do your first name or your last name. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do my last name. The first thing is you're going to have to make your letters into box letters. Now, if you make it into box letters, it will be a lot easier for you on this project, not just bubble letters, because bubble letters have lots of curves in it. So for this project, to make it a little bit more simpler with the time we have, I want you to do it in box letters. And if you have any trouble doing box letters, I have a simple suggestion. First, write your name across your paper like this and make sure it fits, like you normally would, just using simple lines. So I'm going to do that first. Now, my last name has 5 letters in it. So you got to plan out how you're going to make your name fit, or your word fit across your paper. When you're drawing your first letter, I want you to make sure it's at least half the size of your paper in height. You don't want to make it too small. You don't want to make it too big, because you're going to make these box letters. So I'm going to put the first letter on the left side, and I'm going to put the last letter of my word, or my last name in this case, over here on the right side. And I'm doing this so I can kind of plan out how to fit the rest of my letters. Now, it's H-O-A-N-G, so I'm missing O, A, and N right here. So A is the middle letter, so I'm going to just put it right in the middle of my paper. And look how large I'm making it. That way I know my other letters go right there in between these other words. So I'm going to put an O and I put an N. Now, your name or your word might have more or less than 5 letters, so make sure you do it appropriately. But always start off with your first letter on the left side, put your last letter on the right, and then make it fit in the middle. So that's the first step, is just to make your name, write your name very lightly across your paper like this. And now to make a box letter of each one, you just draw a box around it. Now this is where you're going to still do it very lightly. So I'm going around them. And notice when I say box, I mean you're just using straight lines, not using any curves. So I'm just going around it and drawing a box around each letter. Now the O has a curve in it here, but I'm going to make it a box letter by just drawing a rectangle around it. And the A, I'm going to do this. Anytime there's a point, I just go across with the horizontal line. There's a point, so there's a horizontal line. Points, I do horizontal line. Point, horizontal line, come back down. Horizontal line where I see a point. And this one's gonna be a little bit trickier. And I wanna make it a box letter using all straight lines. After you do that, you're gonna erase the original letters that you drew. So with your eraser, that's why you draw very lightly, because you're going to do a lot of erasing in this project, just like we did with the boxes. And you will be left with the box letters. So this is part 1, is simply getting your word into box letter form. So I'm going to see right here the letter A. I'm going to erase this, the entire part of the A that I originally wrote, and then I can make the inside, the opening of the letter A, however large or small I want to. Okay, same thing with the O. I'm going to erase this entire O because I don't want to use any curved lines right now, just to keep this project a little more simple for you in one-point perspective. So I'm gonna make a little small opening in the middle right here. And then the H, I can just erase the entire inside of the letter H. Now, if you have any of the horizon line going through your letter, you can also erase that at this point too. Once you're happy with your word in box letters, you're gonna simply trace it with something more permanent. But don't do that until you're happy with your word this way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this, and this will finish part 1. That's the end of part 1. Stop right here, and the next time you have art, you'll be doing part 2. In part 2 of this project, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the orthogonals, or the lines that go to the vanishing point on your horizon line. So I had my vanishing point right there in the middle of my letter A right there, okay? Now remember, this is called 1-point perspective because there's one vanishing point. So all the lines that you're about to draw for the project are going to go into this one vanishing point. You're not making new vanishing points for each letter. Every letter will have the same 1 point right here. So the way you're gonna do that is you're gonna start on the left side. You're gonna get your straight edge, and from the corner, each corner of your first letter, you're gonna line up that corner right here by putting your pencil on the corner, line it up to the vanishing point. And you're gonna draw a line, or the orthogonal, from that corner to the vanishing point. But if it hits the letter itself, or if it hits any other letter, you're going to stop immediately. So on the way to the vanishing point, you'll notice that the H hits the other part of the H. So I'm gonna stop right there. So I can stop right here. I'm gonna move to another corner. So this corner right here goes and touches itself already, so you don't need to draw it. You can see it already goes through the same letter. But this one doesn't. But this one will hit the letter O in my name. So once it hits the letter O, I will stop right there. I don't need to keep drawing because that's gonna be erased later on if you do that. This corner already touches the H itself, so you don't draw those. Now I'm gonna go down to this corner down here and line it up to the vanishing point, like that. And when it touches the letter O, I will stop. So it's just a little line right there. I'll go, this corner touches itself, and this corner touches itself, so I'm gonna go from right here now to this corner of my H. And that will be really the last corner I'll have to draw. So I'm gonna line it up to my vanishing point, just like that. And when it touches this itself right there, I can stop. So that's all the corners I need to do, because this one already goes through itself, this one goes through itself. And so those are all the corners I need to do for my letter H. Now what we're doing is a very simplified version of 1-point perspective for this project. There are other steps you can take, but I'm gonna avoid those for this year because we are so short on time with art classes. But right now, we're doing a very basic 1-point perspective. Remember, this is my vanishing point for all my letters. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for my letter O. Now, this corner will automatically go through itself, so I'm not going to do that one. Here, I can line this up to my vanishing point, and when it touches the letter A this time, I will stop. Down here, when it touches the letter A, I will stop. It's just a tiny little line there. Then this one already goes through itself, and that one. So now I'll go to the inside corner right here. I'm gonna line it up to the vanishing point, and when it touches itself again, I'm going to stop right there. And then I'm gonna do the same thing right here with this corner inside the letter O. When it touches itself, I stop. I do not need to make one here or here because it already goes through the letter O. Now I'm on the letter A. A is tricky because it also, a lot of them will go to itself already. So I don't need one there or here. But now when I get on the inside of my letter A, this is where I'm gonna have to go to the vanishing point. I'll go one here and also right here. This goes into itself already. This one does too. Now this one is a very slight line, but I need to draw it if I want to keep it in 1-point perspective. So this corner does go to the vanishing point, and when it touches itself, I'll stop right there. This one, oh, it touches itself right away, so it's very close, but I'll stop right there also. Then I'll go to the letter N. Line it up to the vanishing point. This corner, when it touches the A, I'll stop. I'll go down to this one. And when it hits the letter A, I'll stop. This corner. And this corner down here, If it touches itself, you can stop right there. And that's the last one I'll have to do for the letter N, because this one goes through itself already, and this one goes through itself already, and this one also. Then I'll finish off with the letter G. Line up this corner to the vanishing point. When it touches the letter N this time, I'll stop. I'll go down to this next corner. When it touches the N, stop. And I'm gonna do that for all the corners that don't touch itself. So right here is another one. Then this one right here is gonna be a really tight line, but I know it's gonna go there, so I'm gonna stop right there. And then these corners right here in the letter G will also have the same effect. Here, here, and this one's gonna be really tight, but it does go a little bit. I'll need to draw that. And that's the letter G. So to finish off part 2, after you do all your orthogonals going to the vanishing point, towards the vanishing point, I should say, not all the way to it, but towards the vanishing point, I will get another permanent instrument or art material and just trace those lines. So for part 2, you're really adding the orthogonals that go to your vanishing point. And remember, this is a very simplified version of one-point perspective. There are more in-depth ways of doing this that we're not going to cover this year in art, just due to the amount of time, so we can do more projects. But I'm going to draw this, and we're trying to make it look like there's perspective, or a third dimension of depth. There we go. For part 3 of our one-point perspective name project, we're gonna add color to make it look more three-dimensional. Now, there are 2 ways you can go about this. So I'm gonna also make this part very simple. You're gonna need 2 different type of materials to color this. For me, I'm gonna use crayons and I'm gonna use markers for this. The reason why I'm using crayons and markers is because crayons will show up brighter than markers will show up brighter than crayons. You want something that's gonna have good contrast or good differences when you lay down your colors. Because what you're gonna do is, for the face of your letters, that's the front part of your letters, you're gonna use one material. For me, I'm gonna use markers. And then for the side, you're gonna fill those in with some other material that has a contrast, and that's crayons, which are gonna be lighter. The reason why I'm doing it this way is because as you draw things towards the vanishing point, the colors also gets affected. It could get lighter or it could get darker depending on where your light source is. But I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I just want you to know that I want your face of your letters to be one material and keep it consistent. So if I'm gonna do marker for the H, I'm gonna do it for the O, A, N, and the G. And I'm gonna do the sides with the crayons. Or if you start off with crayons on the front of the faces, then use marker for the side. That's completely up to you. So, but for me, actually, I'm gonna do the faces with crayon. So for instance, if I do the faces with crayons, let's say I do this H with crayon, I'm gonna do all the other faces. That's just the front of the letters. Because when you're doing in one-point perspective, that's the box letters that you drew in step number 1 or part 1. That's the face of our letters. And the reason why I changed my mind is because crayons are a lot easier to fill in big spaces than markers. And I don't want to use all my marker up coloring this in. So if I use crayon to do the face, then I'm also going to use crayons for the face of all my other letters. So I'm just going to run through that. I'm going to change colors for each one also. You can use the same color if you like. Okay, so I just colored the face of all my letters with crayons. And the last step is I'm going to use markers now to color in the sides of each letter. If you want to keep it the same color, but with a marker instead, that's great, but you don't have to. But try to keep it to one color, because if you start using different colors within the different sides of a letter, it can get really confusing and you can lose that depth in your drawing, okay? So like for instance, if I'm gonna use orange marker for the side of my letter H, I'm gonna keep the orange marker on all the sides of my letter H. And I'm gonna use red for all the sides of my O, then I need to keep using that. Okay, so I'm just gonna finish off this project with coloring the sides in with markers. Now I forgot to do one line right here on orthogonal to the vanishing point. So I'm gonna go back in and finish that right now also. And that's the end of this project. This is a simplified version of 1-point perspective name drawing. So we're gonna stop at this project at this point. I hope you enjoyed the project.